Oh, wait.
Welcome everybody to the City of Sunbury Park and Rec Committee meeting for July 6, 2022. It's about 5:32 p.m. How about a roll call? Mr. Piles?
I've got it. Chairman Ghosts.
Here.
Cindy Cooper.
Here.
Dave Martin.
Here.
3 present.
All right, let's go to the approval of the minutes. We did have 2 meetings. The regular Parks meeting was June 1, 2022, and then we had one about a week later on June the 9th. That was, if you recall, was the Fallen Heroes Trail Walk that we did together with CT. And I think both Daryl and Steve were there as well. Looking for scoping out another trail location. Do I have anyone motioning for approval?
I'll make the motion for June 1st, but I would like to note that under the approval of minutes, my last name, there's a typo in my last name.
Okay,
But other than that, I'd like to make the motion to approve it.
And I'll second it.
for June 1,
Yeah.
correct? Okay, very good. A motion by Ms. Cooper with the amended, edited correction on her name, and a second by Mr. Martin. Roll call. Mr. Henson?
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mr. Ghosts.
Yes,
Motion approved.
very good. Then do I have a motion for June 9th?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Martin.
I'll
and
second.
Second by Ms. Cooper. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Hennessy.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Ghosts.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, let's go to the visitor section. I see we have Nancy out there and Aaron Noblet. We do have Aaron scheduled. You want to come on up, Aaron, and introduce yourself and your street address? And I think we have a presentation queued up here, ready to go for you.
Should I use this?
Yes, please. Is that on, Daryl?
There's a switch on the bottom, I think.
I don't know.
Oh, it's up on the side.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can walk,
Can you
you
hear me?
can walk around, point to the screen if you like,
Okay.
whatever you want to do. Go ahead.
I'm Aaron Noblet. I'm a Sunbury resident. Moved here in 2012, 2013, around that time frame. And for a while, when the Tree and Landscape Commission was around, I served on there for, I think, 3 or 4 years or so.
What's your street address? Sorry to interrupt.
597 Heartland Court.
597, and what was it again? The street name?
Heartland Court.
Heartland. Okay, very good. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I'm a ISA certified arborist and worked in the field of forestry and as an arborist for going on 20 years now. And anybody that was involved with creating this park, I just want to thank them for this because I think it's really awesome that it happened. I think it came about by just making some people aware of it during the development process. And then I think that might have been 19 acres that's preserved. It's going to be accessible to the public with biking trails and hiking trails. And I just think it's really awesome that it actually happened. So I kind of knew when we were looking at where we were going to move, I was just looking at Google Earth and noticed that park or noticed that wooded area and thought, wow, that's just an incredible opportunity to make it accessible as Sunbury grows and where you can even walk to it, bike to it, make it pedestrian accessible. So I kind of honed in on that, and then it actually came about. And it's a mature, healthy forest, oak, hickory, maple, beech, which is kind of like a climax forest, which is really neat. You get a lot of animals in there and all kinds of other diversity as far as wildlife goes. So yeah, I don't know what the plan is for it exactly, but I think it's a great opportunity for nature observation, for schools and education. So it's just, I just wanted to make a note of how cool I think it is it actually happened. So in the process during development, if you want to go to the next slide, as an arborist, we we always get called in. It's usually after the fact. Why are the trees dying? And a lot of times it's due to lack of root zone protection. So I wish I would have been more involved from the beginning with this. We may have trees that die along the edge. Like this is the extension of, I think it's Millstone or Village Mill, as it extends through the road extension that's going through there. So if there were to, it'd be good to put fencing along here. But just from the soil compaction of running bulldozers and heavy equipment on the root zone, that can actually lead to, within the next 3 to 5 years, you start noticing the tops of the trees dying. And I'm assuming this will be the people's backyard, so that will be village property where they might be calling and saying, hey, we've got dead trees back here and now it's hard to get to. But I just think if there's any opportunity to put fencing up and try to preserve it, I don't think it's too little too late. It would be a good idea, just something like this. Typically, if you want to go to the next slide, if it's possible, this is the drip line where the furthest lateral branches extend and then go down. That would be ideal. Just something to keep the heavy equipment off of it as much as possible. I've worked on, when I was a consulting arborist, I'd come out and there was one project where they built a hospital around a huge oak tree. They actually designed it around it, but didn't take the effort to preserve the roots, and it died within the next 5 years. So it was like, well, why'd the tree die? And the same type of scenario.
Can we go back a couple slides on that one overhead map? I want to see if you could point out where that's located.
Go to the first slide. I can really point. Yeah. So this is like, let's see. Village Mill. Okay. So yeah, it's right here. So there's going to be, it's right in this road extension. So these are existing homes, and then it's going to cut through here. And then this is where the new road cut through is. So I believe it's called Village Mill Road. I should have looked that up first, but
Okay.
Along the tree line there, along this tree line, it would be good if there was some sort of, and some ordinance have that in place. Some cities have an ordinance where you tree protection ordinance during development. So that might be something to look into, and I'd certainly be willing to help out with that process too. Just try to come up with something real simple, and that way they're aware of it as they're developing, kind of be proactive instead of reactive with the whole. That's really the main thing, is just being proactive with it, because it's cheaper and, you actually preserve the beauty of the whole thing. So, and then as this is the picture of where the bike trail is cutting through Rosecrans Park, where they're clearing the path to put the paved trail through there. And that's going to be kind of a same scenario if they can be as careful as possible around the root zones of the trees, but I know that's kind of hard when you're paving it and you need to grade it. I wanted to make note here, this is an existing trail in Rosecrans Park, the one that's been there since the school was built.
That's about 6 foot, isn't it? 6 feet?
Yeah. And when they put these trails in, it didn't allow for the natural drainage of the water. So it created like a bowl. They later put a drain in after the fact here to try to alleviate some of the flooding. But what happened was this side of the trail flooded, and about 50 or so hickory trees died. And they were pretty good sized trees. And so as the new trails are being installed, it would be a really good thing to account for drainage to try to avoid that situation from happening. Because what happens is if you have certain trees that are growing in a location because, they like the amount of water that's there, they like the amount of sunlight that's there, and it totally changed that on them. A hickory can't sit in saturated soil, so they will, trees they will die because of that. So just, if there's any way to, and I'm not like a road engineer to tell you how to do it, but taking that drainage into consideration would be a really good thing to try to preserve as much of the woods as possible, so we're not losing it at all edges from where construction is happening.
How harmful is it if you have the edge of the pavement too close to the root system? What is a good amount of clearance, an acceptable amount of clearance?
Well, I think this scenario, you really have there's no way around it. You're going to be in the roots, because it's carving right through the woods. But ideally, like the drip line would be the ideal location as far as the lateral branches extend, draw a line straight down, stay out of that area. But with this, that's not really possible since we're carving through the woods. But it's still kind of trying to be as cautious as possible with the heavy equipment to preserve the roots, and then also, not creating that damming and flooding so that, get the same situation that happened at the original Rosecrans Park.
So it sounds like, if I hear you correctly, that trees can survive even if they have the pavement too close to the root system, as long as there's adequate drainage.
Well, it depends on how much root damage was done. But yeah, hopefully this isn't a problem, but I'm just trying to get ahead of it as much as possible. I think what happens if the bulldozers are compacting the soil and the soil binds up so tight, the roots can't absorb nutrients and water from the soil if it's heavily compacted like that. So compaction is a problem. Physical damage from, hitting the roots or hitting the trunks of the trees, and then creating the damming from the water would be but in this situation, when you're that close to the trees, you really have no choice but to be on top of the root zones.
Would you recommend, if we're going between two trees, to stay closer to one and farther from another to protect the one? And is there a way to know which tree to pick as far as
That just
trying to protect?
kind of be dependent on each different scenario. Have to see the actual example.
Right, yeah, and I know that when I asked the question, but it just, there are trees that you would prefer to keep
Yeah, I agree.
over trees, some
Totally.
trees, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, Wes, is this something that CT thinks about and discusses with the developer, or will discuss when they go about installing the trail?
Yeah, there's tree protection criteria in a lot of the plans, so, this particular trail, is that the one behind the elementary school?
Mhm, yes.
That's been there for a while, so.
This is the newly cleared section, I think, where the new trail's going.
Yeah, where the extension's happening.
Yeah.
To connect the old trails to the new neighborhoods.
Right.
I think I can point out where it's going, if you want to go back to the first slide.
Yeah, go ahead and go back to the first slide again, Steve.
Ideally, you create that grass berm next to the trail, so the trees are cleared from where the pavement construction, but then you're taking more trees down.
Yeah, right.
It's a little bit of a.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's,
So this trail's going right
That's the issue.
here.
Then you end up with a 30-foot strip versus a 15-foot strip. So,
mhm.
It's cutting through right here. And then following the creek as it goes over to the new development. So,
'Cause that's probably an 8 or 10 foot wide trail, isn't it?
probably a 10.
And
But that's the challenge is either you clear a 30-foot strip, leave 10 feet of grass on each side of a 10-foot trail, or and then in that grass area, you lightly compact it, you don't run equipment on it, you seed it and grade it properly, but then you lose 30 feet of trees, so you try to.
you take a chance.
Try to balance.
Yeah.
I guess the only question is some after the fact things, if there is compaction, I know maybe to do some deep aeration pockets or try to loosen up that soil on top of that root zone. So
yeah,
Some repair type things
Yeah.
are possible.
if we monitor, if there's like high value trees or something that we see, like, hey, maybe we need to give it a little, like you said, alleviate the compaction with there's air tools that you can use for things like that. And maybe just I think the main thing though, at this point is kind of just considering the drainage too, because they've already cut it out and they have to have a compacted base to put the pavement, but
So this is probably engineered to be installed at grade, right, Wes?
Yes, yeah.
I'm not aware if we have any major flooding issues back in there. You're back there quite a bit, Aaron. Do we have any standing water back in there?
There's a creek
Hangs
back
around
there.
for a long period of time? Or?
There is a creek and there's a wetland area. Let's see, on off of Fairland. But I'm not sure. I just kind of looked at it from the existing park. So just, I don't know if there's any way to be as careful as possible and kind of figure out if it is going to create any damage. Like originally, I just thought I'd point it out.
Okay, well, I know Wes is here. He's with CT, and I know they'll work diligently with Price Ponds folks to make sure it's engineered properly.
Sounds good.
Anything else to add to that, Wes, at all?
Just try to, those tree protection zones, like you mentioned, are critical, so.
Wes, would you pull your microphone over to, so we can hear you?
The tree protection zones are critical within that drip line, so, you know, if like against that back line of the Millstone Drive, the Price Ponds development, and it goes into another property, but yet there might be a grade condition, so we can't go into the other property without an easement, or, you know, so you do run up to some challenges there on where to stop, but just to try to design around that the best we can and stay out of that drip line, or try to lightly scalp that so they can plant grass, but it's not compacted with equipment.
Yeah, that'd be great.
When is that, in terms of the project sequence, Wes, will that trail be installed toward the end of the project?
I would have to check, yeah, on what the planned timing of that is.
Go ahead, sorry, Aaron.
Another thing, just, you know, as far as maintenance and just routinely taking care of this park, you know, there are some concerns with hazardous trees. This is a dead elm tree that's hanging over the exercise equipment, which actually died from the concrete pad being installed there. And I think I pointed out some other hazardous trees to Tim that, you know, just be nice. Kids are back there all the time. I see them, just to monitor routinely, maybe once or twice a year, make sure that we make it safe in the high target areas where there's actually people directly underneath it. If it's, you know, back in the woods, maybe you don't worry about it so much, but generally, you know, tree risk assessment, you always focus on when you have people directly underneath it and try to get it taken care of.
What's your opinion on whether to remove or leave a naturally felled tree in the woods?
I mean, I think if it's not a major eyesore, leaving it that's no problem. Let it decompose, let wildlife take care of it.
That's what I've always heard. If it's not a danger or hazard in any way, let it sit, right?
Yeah. If it's not an eyesore too, and sometimes people, you know, it depends on who you talk to, but yeah, I think it's fine to leave it lay there, maybe dice it up a little. All those hickories that were removed, around 50 of them back in Rosecrans Park, those all just stayed and laid when we had those removed.
On the other hand, if you have one like this that's dying right next to an area where kids are playing, we want to go ahead and take it down.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this elm, and then there was a couple hickories that were kind of just hanging over the trail from that windstorm we had last year. It's kind of like a frontline wind that they twisted a bunch of the hickory branches. So I think when inviting people back into the woods, you know, and I'm always willing to volunteer to help out with identifying things like this.
You know, if does Brad Gerwig, Daryl, or Steve have a scheduled annual walkthrough of Rosecrans or anything like that he typically does?
Probably not. It's probably as reported, but we can change that.
Yeah, I'd like to see him maybe meet with Aaron and do a walkthrough. We could arrange that some way. Think so.
The other one where, you know, this is
invasive species moving in, they move in where humans have kind of opened up open areas or on the edge line. And then probably next to like the bike trail that is being exploited. Calorie repair is a big one that we have in Rosecrans Park that's trying to work its way into the forest, but it's really not a bad infestation right now. They're pretty small, probably pretty easy to get them out of there. Treat the stumps and just get them while they're little. A lot of infestations light. There's some Japanese honeysuckle on all the Florida rose, which is an invasive species. So what they do is they move in and they just kind of take over the native vegetation. And if they get a hole, they can like drown everything else out to where you have nothing but invasive species. So it's good to, like say if they go tree ties in the middle of the park and they have an open area that exploit, that's what they thrive in. So it's right now, it's just around the edges. It's not bad. It's a real area of a lot of the forest walk through. It's in really good shape. I know Facemeyer does invasive species removal. I've talked to some other residents about volunteer working at it, working away at it. So it's
You recently met with Facemeyer with the New Albany Parks folks, right? Did this to one of their areas?
We're building a park right now, Voltaire Farms, where same scenario. We met them about putting up tree protection zones along the edge lines around the big signature trees, and then they do a lot of invasive species removal. The parks we're working with there heavily infested. I mean, it was very well working with it. It was really bad. It was like nothing but honeysuckle and berries. So it had like clouds. And the reason that is because that's such a mature healthy forest. It's kept it from moving in. It's only able to work its way on the edges. Just want to bring that up.
Is the calorie pear the same as the Cleveland pear tree?
Yeah, they're all labeled as calorie. So Ohio just made it illegal to sell in nurseries because it's a problem. You can see them when they flower along the highways. They really exploit disturb areas.
They're the ones with the nice white blooms in the spring, right? I thought I had got a couple in my backyard. I like them, but they do drop a bunch of crap throughout the whole summer.
Your recommendation then is that we get rid of these invasive trees.
Yeah, removing the invasives would be good. And treating the stumps, people can come back. And,
They're primarily on the edge too, right?
Yeah.
Edge of the trail,
yeah,
as I recall.
yeah, it's not too bad at all. And I also, I didn't know that the village doesn't own the retention pond on that other side. That's where it's really at. So
I think that's the HOA for that development, isn't it, Steve? Probably.
Yeah,
We did look over there. There was a lot of sprouts,
Well, yeah.
pears coming up over there.
go to the next slide, please. They're just kid stuff that I've seen, but I thought about. They were chipping away at this tree with a hatchet, spray painting, carving into the trees. I noticed it a lot last year, and it's kind of a shame to see, but I don't know if it's with kids, but I don't know if there's, just kind of monitoring or signage or something, I don't know, but, there is that.
Okay.
I'm not trying to get something to remove spray paint on the trees. But, healthy trees chopping away, that was kind of a shame to see. Go to the next slide. And also, I've talked about like getting a group of people that are interested in just kind of like helping to take care of this, clean up a couple times a year.
Have a volunteer day or two.
Yeah, something like that, like maybe 2 days out of the year or something, I don't know. But I'd be interested in that. I think there'd be some other people. Just making mountain bike trails through the park, they're kind of cool, but we just want to let anybody do it, I don't know. Just wanted to point that out. I would like it when I was a kid, but at the same time, we want to keep to the established trails. There's a lot of beautiful wildflowers in the park, so I'm trying to preserve them as much as possible. And then, maybe down the road, this is something I did for another community where we created an arboretum. Where like along the bike trails, we put this signage up. So if you can get 30 different species of trees, and you put signage like this and fill out the application, and you have to have kind of like a maintenance plan, it's certified by Morton Arboretum. Be like a certified arboretum, which I thought, might be neat for the schools. Since it is right between two schools and science. The one where I did it for a different community, the same scenarios by a school and the science teachers love taking kids back there. Just something to think about. I think it's a perfect spot for it. But that might be down the road, down a couple of years or so.
Okay.
That'd be something.
That's a good idea.
Help it out. So, and saying like who will be involved, I'm sure city employees probably have their hands full with other stuff, but the volunteers, like I mentioned before, get the Boy Scouts and Girl Scout troops involved. But it's a really neat part. Have some sort of routine plan to take care of.
What's your experience with New Albany and the other municipalities around here and how they maintain their park?
Well, right now we're growing, and that's what I do. I'm a forestry specialist for New Albany, so we spend a lot of time taking care of parks. There's a parks crew and a forestry crew, and we kind of work together to do that. Take care of, I think there's over 30,000 street trees. So there's, they have tons of trees to take care of. So we're doing that full time.
Okay.
So that's all I have, and I appreciate you having me up here.
Excellent. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Very helpful. I think next steps in the short term would be to schedule a walkthrough. I think if you don't mind with Brad Gerwig and maybe Daryl or Steve
Sure.
in the next week or two.
Yeah, just let me know.
Okay. You guys have any other questions for Aaron?
No, thanks for,
Yeah, that was a lot of good information, and I'm sure we could probably think about ways to maintain these parks, but possibly, just getting into a routine with it.
Mhm.
So we could certainly contact the Cub Scout troop, or the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts. But I think with things like that, like it needs to be followed through. Because if they say yes, they're happy to help, we need to follow through and say, okay, well, here's 3 dates, which works for your troop or something like that,
Mhm.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
And also even other groups like the Lions or the Rotary, like I know Rotary talks about, do you remember, Nancy, something similar to what you're saying with the Arboretum, like there's other, or Dave, there's other areas where it's like, I think maybe even a part of the school, but I know that other groups would be interested in helping too. Everyone loves trees. And when you can connect them with kids and education, we're all in.
Sounds good. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. It's got about 20 minutes remaining, so let's see what we have here. Next on the agenda, multi-use trail planning and access, Fallen Heroes. I think Wes shared an email earlier this week. Perhaps you can just summarize that for us, Wes, on where we are on Fallen Heroes since you're here. Mhm.
Quick update on the trails. So Fallen Heroes Phase 2, Mr. Facemeyer installed a couple swales there. It really helped with the drainage on that. I don't know if you've been down there to see those.
I did. As a matter of fact, this morning it was, the flood was there, but then I came by this evening, it had cleared off.
I actually just walked it, so
That was encouraging.
there's some tree damage, some limbs down, a lot of debris, but the trails.
Mhm.
It's just a little bit more. Some mud on it, but looks a lot better.
Mhm.
The RRFB flasher's working on Granville. We still have the pavement markings, the thermoplastic there to replace. And then that project will be punched out. Fallen Heroes Phase 3 and 4. that section that we're gonna survey's been cleared, our crew's being scheduled. Looking at alignments there and how to do that, we have some thoughts that we're gonna share here shortly. And that's moving forward. So again, we're fine there on the funding as long as that project started this year.
Mhm.
It can be restored in the spring and finished up. We've stayed in touch with Matt Simpson from Preservation Parks on that. The reservoir project trails, quite a bit of cleanup effort and punch list items up there have been occurring. The asphalt edges have been addressed. I did ask about some of the cracks. They were going to check those. One recommendation is probably next year. If you saw that when it was constructed, it was a little bit of a tough spot to put a paving machine and get asphalt up there, but they did it. So is to put a seal coat on that next year, just kind of plan for a maintenance there. I think
Yeah,
that would really seal that
yeah.
fresh asphalt up and help preserve that. But they did address a few of the edges where they were a bit wavy, and they reseeded. They put soil down and reseeded all the edges. So that's looks better. They still have a few cutouts in the overflow structures to do. Brad was out for a bit and they had to get the water level in the reservoir down, and with the recent rains, it hasn't helped, but they still have a cutout there to finish. And that's an update on the 3 trail projects.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
All right, Morpsey project. Mr. Hennessy or Mr. Piles, did you have something there?
Yeah,
Steve does.
I'll just
Okay.
mention, Morpsey had accepted our proposal or request for some technical assistance on our trails. The concept being to update our current state map, current state being right now, with some of the new subdivisions that are coming in, and then to do a future state map and then look at opportunities, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats. So they held a meeting with our planning commission and let's see, the Delaware County Planning was here, the health department, and I'm going to miss someone.
Preservation
Parks. So we had some stakeholders working with our planning commission, and actually I think they had a pretty good meeting with that and got some discussion and some ideas out. They're doing a follow-up second workshop that'll be for the broader community, and I need to check that date. It may be next week.
Okay.
And if it is, I will send you an email immediately tomorrow morning, and I will get something up on Facebook. And I'll check with Dave Bream about if we have to post it as a public meeting type thing. Mostly they're going to be imparting information. They may also be hearing comments, so it could potentially be a public meeting, but we'll get that ironed tomorrow morning. And let's see. And then hopefully by the end of August, we'll have the project wrapped up with an implementation plan and their full report. So.
Good deal. Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Piles on that? Okay. All right, let's go to Source Point Programming. I think Mr. Hennessy we have a flyer here. And
Yes, so just
information.
quickly, we've put together a draft flyer to promote the a community input session for, I think, July 26th, 10 a.m. is the tentative date. So in your packet is basically, like I said, the promotion for that. I still need to run that past the folks over at Source Point, but I've confirmed the date with them. It works. So I think assuming the committee is fine with what you see, if you see some edits you'd like to make, just note them, send it back to me. We'll be promoting this more actively here probably in about a week.
Excellent. That's a Tuesday morning, July 26th, 10 a.m. Yep, for the record. Okay.
Yep.
You'll be sharing this on social media?
Yes. And we'll share it through the library as well, because they've got some
good.
Source Point programming.
Yeah.
They've agreed to help us with that. Source Point will promote it to anyone who's attending programming already at their facility that's from the Sunbury area. So, yeah, lots of different sources to try to get some turnout.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Daryl. Let's go to, real quick, down the other park updates. We already talked about the Reservoir Park. The Weatherby tree dedication, I've had some correspondence with Scott on that, and he's still trying to figure out a date where the vast majority of the family can be there. Although he's having some difficulties, so I'm beginning to think maybe we choose a couple dates ourselves and throw them out there and let them know which one works, just so we've got something set, because I want to get that plaque out there on the tree. So we'll look at the calendar and send an email out maybe this week or early next week.
You planning on doing a Saturday morning kind of a thing, or have you thought that far ahead?
Not really. I haven't thought about it that much yet in terms of the day of the week. I did tell Scott that we would be flexible. If he needs a Saturday or a weekend, we could do that. But I was kind of leaving it up to him to get to make the day and the time and totally be flexible. But maybe we propose a Saturday, and a day of the week in the evening, maybe before the next council meeting in 2 weeks, or perhaps during the next parks meeting. That gives them 30 days. What do you think?
I would prefer before the next parks meeting, because I'll be in Scottsdale, Arizona 2 weeks from today.
Ooh, nice.
So,
Okay. Any thoughts from Steve or Daryl on there?
Yeah.
Whatever works.
Set a date,
Yeah.
make it work. Yeah.
Okay. I'll get an email out to you guys for feedback on a date, 2 dates. Then I'll shoot it over to Scott.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's go back up then to new business. Something we want to start thinking about, we talked about this before, is our master plan and what do we do after we get through with the reservoir. Right now we're focused on, we have our funding focused on the reservoir and trying to get that done. We're going to be working with management partners to help us plan that out a little bit more. That's probably another year away before it's completed potentially, but I would like to have the next park lined up and ready to go shortly thereafter. So my thought was J.R. Smith Park and looking at what we could do with that. That seems to be the gem right there, sitting right next to the village. And now that we got the bleachers out of there and the football folks are moving elsewhere, I think the opportunity is right. Any thoughts on that, Wes?
We'll pull the trigger, we'll dig in and look at that. We have a concept plan and the master plan, so I think just to take another feasibility look at that, take a look at the costs, some funding options. What would you think for local match is available to contribute to improvements there? If you had to think about that, that might be something to research just as far as a local match that we can generate.
I think we need to talk with Ms. Belcher and Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Get their thoughts on what kind of funding might be available maybe a year and a half, 2 years from now. But I think should be fairly robust the way we're growing and changing our impact fees.
Right.
They'll have more income coming in there specifically for parks. Plus you throw the grant money opportunities in there.
I think maybe the connectivity too, just making sure from coming down Cherry or 37 that it's walkable to reach there from the other parts. Just
Yeah.
if there's additional pedestrian crossing or sidewalk or some other access points. I know you walk that park frequently, right? So it's,
Yeah, we do.
any thoughts there on the pedestrian access to it? I mean, it's centrally located, but just the.
Well, and also,
safety
I think
features.
that and the Ohio to Erie Trail, like making it some sort of bike respite area. I was just looking, because I haven't seen this in a while, so I was just looking, I see there's like drinking fountains, and I'm not an active biker, but Tim, you would know like what would be good to have for a bike respite.
Mhm.
I think we should keep those things in mind.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The Ohio to Erie Trail is
Some
gonna
shade,
be,
probably.
it's gonna run eventually. It's set and planned to run adjacent
Mhm.
to that one side of the park, that southeast side. So that's another reason why I think we want to line this up, tee this park up next, so we can have that ready perhaps when the Ohio Erie Trail is installed and ready. And we can make a path that connects directly to it. Bike, pumps, tires,
Okay, yeah,
losing, I can't think of the name of the word, but,
Air-
tire pump, air
Yeah.
pumps, drinking fountain,
mhm.
just a nice bike repair. They have those bike repair stations too that go along with that. I think that would be ideal. We
I
could
think
draw
so,
in the
too.
bikers, you know, get them to take a break there, look at the restaurants, maybe they get something to eat.
Yeah, Walk to Serve or any of the other restaurants.
And would it be possible to do outhouse type situation or restrooms with flushable facilities? You know, those are the kind of things that will get people's attention and make them feel real good about going through town.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think we want to
Yeah,
look
there's-
at the restroom facility there. That's written here on page.
Yeah, it is on
look
the
at-
master.
Yeah, the top of page 42 there, makes an ideal location for a trailhead, especially since it could take a while for some pieces of the proposed trail to be acquired from current private property owners. So we have to look at that.
Page 42.
I don't see 42, but I see page 20 up here.
Yeah, page 20 for the packet.
Oh, up here.
And
so
then,
sorry, yeah.
Oh, okay.
J.R. Smith could provide quality restroom facilities, a picnic shelter, a drinking fountain, bottle filling station, bike fixing station near the trail. You know, locating a major trailhead close to downtown will bring bicyclists into the local restaurants, drinking establishments. Of course, you know, we got to think hard and long about the parking forever. For a long time, parking down there has always been an issue. So we got to think about
And
that.
there's one way in and one way out.
Right, the
now, so-
ingress and egress has not been good.
No,
So we have to focus on that.
yeah,
You know, the concept plan here that we're looking at, we talked about adding an amphitheater or a band shell of some kind potentially. Maybe this is where, and this is one of the items on our list, a dog park.
park.
Maybe we have enough room for a, you know, we can't do it all. So.
Right. Well, and there's other parks that an amphitheater might be
Mhm.
better for.
Yeah, I still think the best spot there, if we can make it happen someday, is over there behind the library.
Right.
Is this anticipating the elimination of the Lions building?
Yeah, I
or
was
am
wondering
missing
that too.
something?
In this plan, it doesn't
So
appear to be
going
missing.
through it.
A couple of buildings we currently have are not on here.
So, you know,
concept.
maybe we keep that in place and that's where the new overhaul
Yeah.
restaurant facility is.
But, well, that's where the road is on here. Like, they have a road.
At the second
The
exit,
second,
into the parking lot, yeah. The driveway into the parking lot off of Granville Street, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a real big fan. What's your thought, Wes, on an entrance there off East Granville,
Right, I know, I was
that close to that
thinking
intersection?
about that as well. I know that was debated with the group that prepared it. We'd have some grade coming down from Granville, just knowing that area. So that would have to be looked at. Just
that's a pretty steep hill there.
it is, yes, so you would.
Going
definitely
down.
have a decent slope at that location. There's
We
gas,
gotta get in there
gas
somehow.
pump house in that area too, I think. Too, right,
Mhm.
well, I mean, natural gas. Right.
If you look around that though,
It's
I
not
mean,
a
there's really no other
second access.
ideal
Unless we were to,
spot.
there's private property there with the certified, so there's really no way to, unless we obtain some kind of easement there to 37 on the south side of their property, but I know that. So we'd have to take a second hard look at that.
Okay.
And they still use that for the ox roast when they do the ox roast there or not?
I don't
They don't do the ox roast anymore.
So they stopped that, okay.
No,
I knew that was a spot there back in the day. So.
right. Yeah, they haven't done it for a couple of years now.
Okay.
Okay, well, a lot to think about there. I think, Wes, if we could, for our next meeting in a month, maybe we could have, you could, for next step, come up with another couple of conceptual designs
Sure.
to think about. And feel free to reach out to any of us between now and then for input and feedback.
Okay.
Okay. But
Is the splash pad something that's been discussed? Is that a
Right.
preferred amenity?
we definitely have that
Okay,
in demand.
okay,
That's the question
Doing-
is this the right spot?
right. We're doing a few of those in some other areas and so there's some equipment and other things to consider there, but they're definitely doable. They're running in the 250, 300,000 range complete, just the ballpark cost, so.
Plus maintenance and upkeep running the
They're
water.
essentially a pool in terms of somebody has to daily check the water quality, adjust the equipment.
Circulation, yeah.
Yeah. There's, you're gonna need pumps to get the water up. Do splash pads recirculate?
They
water?
do, yeah,
There's two different systems, right?
there are two different systems. One's a run through,
Mm-hmm.
you would use a lot of water, where it just kind of drains through and then runs off to a storm sewer.
Right.
And then there's one where it recirculates, like Steve said, like a pool, and there's filters and you chlorinate it. And so that gets some more mechanical equipment, but it's all packaged up in a unit that's, very doable. But yeah, a little bit of maintenance, but they're very nice once they're working and people are using them.
How much space do you really need to make it work well?
There's all kind of different sizes. That looks very doable there in the center. 50 by 50, 75 by 75. When you do you usually do a concrete.
What do you do the base of it so that it's slippery when it's wet? To keep people from falling down.
So the actual material.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. It's
Is it a rubberized material
I
or?
think there's different products there, and it just all comes pre-manufactured.
Right, okay.
And they have on-off switches for the water. You can turn the water on by yourself and turn that off. So
Okay.
you're saving water. You don't want that to run all day.
Besides that one over there in Delaware, which I think is really nice, what other local ones could we take a look at?
Al has a nice
Powell
one.
has a nice one.
There's a teeny tiny one in Westerville behind the library. It's considered a splash pad, but it's really just like like a little fountain on the floor. It's really more like for toddlers, I would say, not kids.
Mhm.
But it's a different concept that we could certainly look at. But the Powell one's nice, Delaware's nice. What's also nice about those is there's a playground immediately adjacent to it, so that if they don't want to play in the water anymore, they can play on the playground, and you can make it so that parents, caregivers can sort of be in the middle. And assuming the kid is big enough to go to both, you can have vision of the kid at all times. So that's nice.
I also see we have that basketball court in that conceptual plan, but whether it's a basketball court or tennis court, we definitely have to incorporate pickleball, make it a part of it, or maybe that's the primary court instead of the basketball. So we got to think about that too. All right. Anything else, gentlemen?
Well, did you want to talk a little more about the dog park? I mean, I know we're running up against time, but
I do, but let's talk about it next month. My son was gonna send me pictures of the dog park near his house, but he hasn't been there for a couple weeks, and it's an amazing place. And this stuff you don't think about, like this dog park, when you go in the first gate, you're in a 10 by 10 completely fenced area. And you don't open the other gate till you close the first gate. That way dogs aren't sneaking out.
Mhm.
And the stuff they think about, but they have climbing toys for dogs. They actually have a little teeter-totter where a dog walks up one side and then it tips down and goes down the other side. They have all kinds of neat toys for the dogs, and the dogs love it. They have a ball there, so. And I'm hoping to get some pictures that I can share with y'all. And
Send
we
it
can
to
talk a
them so
little
we
further
can
about
see
it, and
on
maybe
there.
some ideas, so.
Yeah, and if you could ask him for some rough dimensions on.
It's a couple acres.
Yeah.
It's pretty good size, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's definitely a need. That's just a matter of timing and where can we put
Yeah.
it.
yeah,
It might be really nice in that area because, I mean, it's all, like, I can just visualize it as such a family-friendly space where there's something for everyone. If you have the biking respite area and a dog park and a splash pad, there's just,
And it's
little
centrally
bit
located to the
central, yeah.
trail, so people can walk their dog on the
Mhm.
trail and go
Yeah.
right down
and
there.
get, yeah.
and they have bags for people to clean up
Yeah,
behind their
of course,
dogs.
yeah.
They don't just leave it in the lay and make a mess for everybody. But I've been there with him before when there've been 20 dogs running together and just having so much fun. It's really cool.
Make sure we revise our liability policy accordingly. Dog bite policy.
Yeah.
Since it will be on our land, but, okay. Anything further from anyone? Unfinished or finished? Okay. Motion for adjournment? I'll make that motion.
A second.
Second by Ms. Cooper. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Hennessy.
all right, Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.